and benefits. I think we can divide them into four main areas. Firstly, there are financial reasons from the government's point of view for privatising things. Secondly, privatisation can be seen in a macro context. It's a form of supply side policy. I mean, we'll talk about all of these in a minute. Thirdly, often the argument is that state-run firms or areas tend to be inefficient, so therefore privatising them might increase efficiency. And fourthly, there is this idea that it's going to reverse underinvestment. That when things are state-run, the government will tend not to invest in them. So therefore, if you can put it into the private sector, there'll be more investment takes place. And what we'll do is we'll look at each of these in turn, and I may break this up into some sub videos depending on how time goes. So I don't know how long it's going to take yet, but if it starts taking a long time, I'll break it up. So if we take each of those in turn, if we take finance, there are certain obvious ways in which, in theory, privatisation is going to improve the government's finance. One is obviously the proceeds of sale. So if you denationalise something, particularly, then private sector shareholders will pay to become owners of it. So the government, under Thatcher, the government made billions by selling things like British Steel, British Airways, British Telecom, BG, and so on and so forth. Secondly, obviously, if you outsource something, like hospital cleaning, then the reason that you're outsourcing it is that you think the private sector firm will be able to do it more cheaply and hopefully better. But do it more cheaply than what you're paying at the moment. So if at the moment you're paying £500 million to clean some hospitals, and the state and the private sector says they can do it for £400 million, then that's going to save you £100 million a year. Thirdly, obviously, some of the state-run businesses were loss-making. So the government no longer has to finance those losses. So again, under Thatcher, one of the arguments for the privatisation of the coal industry was that these coal mines were loss-making, and that therefore the government didn't want to continue to finance those losses. And in theory, obviously, even when the organisation becomes profitable, if it does, then the government can get corporation tax. On the profits of the PLC. So even if the organisation does become spectacularly profitable once it's been privatised, the government's still going to get some of that. So those are in theory your benefits. How true are they necessarily? Well, if you look at the UK system, we can say that in a lot of privatised sectors, or in some of them at least, subsidies remain. So especially if you take the railway industry, take trains or the railway in the UK, the government still pays a lot of money towards ensuring those services operate. So how much money have we genuinely saved? That's an interesting question. But this is all going to vary by sector, and I think that's the key point that we'll come to at the end. A lot depends on if you privatise something and it genuinely faces competition from other businesses, either nationally or internationally, then privatisation tends to work quite well. If you privatise sectors where actually there's very little competition, then what we'll find is that it tends not to work so well. Secondly, when you look at the proceeds of sale, well, that's all very well, but the question is, how much do you sell it for? And there's been various criticism of UK privatisations saying that actually the assets, the businesses, they were sold too cheaply. So a longer ago example is something like BG, where if you bought BG shares and then reinvested all the dividends, then over a 15 or 20 year period, you'd have made a 5,000% profit on those shares. So we privatise it and it becomes more efficient, but 5,000%, that seems to suggest that actually the government got the price wrong. More recently, it was estimated that Royal Mail was probably undersold by certainly at least £1 billion. So in other words, once shares started trading, the price of those shares went up quite a bit, suggesting again that the government had sold them for a price that was too low. in the case of some of the Thatcher privatisations, yeah, there was big increases in unemployment. And when I was at university, yeah, there was kind of a guy called Andrew Glynn who was saying, well, look, you're privatising all of these um, sectors like steel and unemployment because sorry, like steel and coal because yeah, you're saying well they're loss making, but you're going to lose even more because these people are just not going to find jobs. It was the middle of a recession. You're going to have to pay them unemployment benefit. So surely it makes more sense just to continue operating the coal mines, paying these people, and at least you get some coal out at the end of it. But obviously, unemployment leads to an increase in the budget deficit. So if privatisation leads to a big increase in unemployment, then actually we're saying in theory government finances improve, but actually maybe they deteriorate. And obviously, yeah, if the government privatises things that were profitable, yeah, then there's the loss of that profit. So loss of profit, yeah, of industries that were successful or could be successful. So if you take BP, British Petroleum as was, obviously it's making vast quantities of money. There is an argument that, like Statoil in Norway, had the government retained control of that, then it would still have all those profits. I'm going to pause this one at this point, because it's up to 6 minutes, and I'll go on with the kind of next areas in a minute.